And in Lenox, Alabama, tonight we're having a debate, February 29th. Only comes around once every 4 years. Good. Thank you for joining us. We're in Lenox, Alabama, Dinosaur Adventureland. You can go to our website, drdino.com. We're on a lot of different programs. Let's see, on Rumble, TikTok, four channels on YouTube, Odyssey, and the one that's becoming by far the biggest is Facebook. So go to Kent Hovind Official on Facebook. Thank you for joining us. Okay, tonight, Keith from North Carolina is an aerospace, works in the aerospace industry, and he's going to be defending the evolution theory, and I'll be countering that here. So, Keith, thank you for joining us. Good to have you with us. Got him in there? There we go. All right. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Keith.
All right. So, I'd like to say hello to everybody, and thank you to Mr. Hovind for having me here with me, and thank you to the audience for supporting open discussions like this. I'm excited to see how this pans out, but before we jump into it, I wanted to start out with laying out some definitions and explanations that'll be relevant throughout tonight's debate. First of all, I wanted to define evolution. I know Mr. Hovind here likes to obfuscate things with the 6 types of evolution, but numbers 1 through 3 are the origins of the universe, and number 4 is the origin of life. If he wants to debate those topics, well, that's fine, we can do that, but this debate is only on the last 2 types of evolution, microevolution and macroevolution. But I would argue that they're essentially the same thing. Take a bucket of water with blue food coloring in it and start dripping in some red food coloring. Each drop is a microevolution, but which specific drop makes it change from red to purple or blue to purple? There's not one. It's a gradual change, so it's practically an impossible line to draw. But eventually you'll just have to pick a point and say, now it's purple, and that's macroevolution, essentially. From one life form to another by very small differences in genetic code between each generation that gets passed down, so that when you look at the big picture and compare the original form to the current form, they have vast differences, even though no single generation produced any noticeable change. And he can try to straw man it and say it's a rock turning into a whale or a cow giving birth to a dog, but all that does is either show that you, A, don't know what you're talking about, or B, you're being deliberately deceitful. And if it's the former, you've done hundreds of these debates before, so you have no excuse to not understanding the concept. And if it's the latter, then you've probably been, in my opinion, studying the wrong parts of the Bible. I made to give Job 13:5 a whirl. You can bring out your pacifiers and your SpongeBobs, and you can make believe and say that evolutionists think that one day a cat grew from an apple tree, and I could bring out a handwritten note that says everything on this sheet of paper is the true word of God, and humans are a type of bait. And then I can make equally dubious claims that creationists believe that Jesus and Poseidon parted in college, and that's why Atlantis sunk. It's absurd, and literally no one believes that. And comments like that do nothing but muddy the waters, create division, and squash curiosity. But maybe that's your goal, to suppress free thought. I mean, that's essentially the message provided in Proverbs whenever the Bible says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not into thine own understanding. Trust the Bible, not your senses. Don't think, just believe. And I mean, it's not wrong. The Bible does make a lot of sense when you don't think about it. But anyway, the last thing I wanted to define is theory. Although Kent already knows this, he often pretends not to. So I want to make it very clear right from the beginning. You see, in a day-to-day conversation, a theory is just an idea, a possibility, an educated guess. In science, however, that would be called a hypothesis. To become a theory by scientific standards, you have to have a plethora of empirical evidence supporting your theory, and it has to explain the world around us better than any other theory. Theories can be refined and improved given new evidence, which is why it's just a theory, but it's far more than just a hypothesis. Notice one thing I won't ask Kent to define, which many have to no avail. It's the word kind. Not just because it would do nothing but waste time with us chasing each other's tails, but because I don't think it's absolutely imperative in dismantling his arguments. Instead, I want to focus more on trying to get him to look at speciation in a different light, which means we have to be very careful where we draw those lines between species. If we get hung up on the lines, we'll be arguing the wrong points all night. But now that we've defined evolution and theory, we can actually discuss the theory of evolution. One thing he often challenges opponents to do, however, I never received such a request, is to provide their three best pieces of evidence for evolution. However, if you narrow the scope to only 3 points of evidence, 3 individual observations, it won't truly encompass the vast pile of physical fossilized evidence. Just look at the patterns. For instance, the deeper we find hominid fossils, the more ape-like they appear. As we get to the top, they begin to resemble modern humans. And it's not random, it's predictable. And we predicted several times what we would find and where we would find it. And when we find it right where we said it was, the creationists just brush it off like it's not even relevant. And before you say, oh, if you take the pacifier of time away, the evolutionists are going to scream. Well, the same can be said about Kent and his flood. You can't explain anything without your oppressive genocide. So I think I'll keep my pacifier. Thank you. Back to you, Kent.
Okay. Thank you. Covered several topics there. Appreciate that. Let's see. You said you would like to know where the line is between macro and micro, or macro and micro evolution. Let me get my slides up here. I didn't realize you only took 6 minutes. Hang on, let me reset my clock here. Okay. I would say the line between micro and macroevolution is evidence. We all agree variations happen within the same, what anybody would call the same kind of animal. There's a lot of variations. Does it go across that? Well, you said, by adding drops of color to where does it change from red to purple? A good illustration, okay? Well, I think we could take your family trees that they show in the textbooks, and they claim that an amoeba turned to everything we have today. And so they draw lines on paper that a ladybug and a zebra and a dinosaur have a common ancestor. When have we ever seen a ladybug produce a non-ladybug? We never have. These are simply just lines on paper from a protozoa turning slowly into the fish family and then to the humans. And there is no evidence for this. I don't have to prove it didn't happen. You guys want us all to pay to teach that it did happen. I think the burden of proof's on you for these family trees. They make these trees and say, well, humans and butterflies have a common ancestor. Well, we know there are hundreds and hundreds of varieties of butterflies. I would consent they might have had a common ancestor called a butterfly. That does not give you the right, or anybody the right, to make the bold claim that butterflies are related to humans. But that's what this textbook is clearly doing. And so I would say, as far as the definition of kind, well, you got a similar problem with the definition of species. I'll give kind in a minute. I think most people that study this would say it's pretty hard to define exactly what a species is. A group of organisms that can reproduce naturally with one another and create fertile offspring. Cows and pine trees cannot do that, okay? They're a different kind. Cows and horses cannot do that. Cows and hamsters cannot do that. Species, kind or sort. Wow. Webster Dictionary used kind to define species. I think the terms are very similar, but species is difficult to explain, to define, to really sharply draw the line. Where exactly is a species? Synonyms for species, a kind. Wow, there we go. Biology Dictionary. A species, a group of organisms share genetic heritage, able to interbreed and create offspring that are also fertile. Okay. Scientists have changed the definition of species several times through history. God said they bring forth, i.e. make babies, after their kind, after their kind, after their kind. 10 times in the first chapter, 24 times in the first 7 chapters, the Bible says they'll bring forth after their kind. So it seems to be that kind has to do with bringing forth, making babies. Up on the North 40 of our pasture here in the Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama, we have cows and sheep and donkeys all mixed together. The donkeys don't even think about breeding with the sheep or cows. Never crosses their mind. They look for another donkey. The cows only look for another cow. They know what their kind is. And this whole idea of naming, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, the whole classification system is man putting his classification on the animals. The animals don't care how we classify them. They know what their kind is. People are real paranoid about classifying their tools. Let's put all the hammers in one spot, all the wrenches in one spot. The tools don't care where you put them. It's the human who cares. And we've decided to make classification systems and classify them. God said 26 times in the first 7 chapters, if they can bring forth, they're the same kind. So I think we would agree horses and cows cannot bring forth babies. They are a different kind. Now, how many kinds? Well, they now estimate, let's see, there are 450 breeds of cows in the world. I would say they probably had a common ancestor called a cow. And maybe somebody with time and interest could make a family tree of all the 450 breeds of cows and how they all came from a cow that got off of Noah's Ark. No question. That does not prove cows are related to mosquitoes. You guys want to take the evidence we see for variation within the kind, and there's a lot of variations. Dog breeds, dogs make baby dogs every time. You may get a big one or a little one, but you're going to get a dog, and there's a limit. It never goes outside of the dog kind. The world's smallest dog, 3.8 inches, less than 4 inches tall. Completely useless, but they call it still a dog. Okay? Is it possible to get a dog as small as a flea? Every dog breeder would say, no, that's not possible. Even these at 3.8, they usually cannot reproduce. Everything's too small. They can't make babies. So there is a limit. You have big dogs and little dogs, but there's a limit, and they can't go beyond that limit. Have they reached the limit? I don't know. They might get one a half inch, taller or something, but they're not going to get a dog as big as Texas. So I think we all see they're never going to get one 8 miles tall or a half inch tall. So yes, there are variations, no question, Keith, I agree, but they're limited. And what's the limit? Well, there are biological limits, physical limits, genetic limits. But you guys want to say, because we see 400 kinds of cows, therefore cows are related to mosquitoes. That's not science. That's all I say. I say you guys are welcome to believe all these family trees, draw all the lines on paper you wish. I don't care. Don't claim it is science, and don't make everybody pay to teach that in school. That's not science. This is somebody's religion. They believe everybody came from a protozoa, okay? Believe all you want. They make these family trees, and they want everybody to pay to have this to be taught like it's part of science, and it just is not. My whole objection is that you guys have a religious belief that these variations that we do all see, we all see the same variations, we also see that they're limited. But you guys don't admit there are limits. You think a protozoa can turn to a biology teacher if you give it billions of years. That's a fairy tale. Even if it's true, it certainly hasn't been shown scientifically yet. All we've shown scientifically is protozoa make baby protozoa. No exceptions. You wish to believe there's a connection? Believe all you want. But be honest and call it a religious belief. So I didn't get to cover everything you mentioned. Bible makes sense if we don't think about it. It's an obvious slap at the Bible. I'll make the same one at evolution. Evolution only makes sense if you don't think at all. You don't think at all. You just believe. The protozoa turned to a human. You have to believe. As far as where the exact line is where it changes, that's a good question. I know that we observed 400 breeds of cows, 7,500 now types of apples. Do you believe apples and cows have a common ancestor, Keith? Your turn.
Yes, I do. And I think you may have missed where I was coming from. Maybe I wasn't clear. I'm not sure. I wasn't saying that I'm trying to pinpoint exactly where to draw the line. I'm saying we should ignore those lines because whether you're looking at species or kind, obviously species has a much more well-defined definition than kind does. It still gets muddy when you start looking closely. Also, you were saying that evolution is a religion, but a religion requires some belief in a higher power, some supernatural not necessarily a deity in every religion, but most. Atheists do not believe in anything supernatural. Evolution is not a supernatural phenomenon. It's natural. There's nothing supernatural about it. So to call it a religion is misrepresenting it, because it is science, because it's backed by scientific methods. You also mentioned that you're not trying to put your religion into school, yet PragerU videos are now being shown in Florida schools, and they're not going to stop there either.
Hello? Okay, I didn't hear that last statement. What am I wanting to get in the schools?
PragerU videos, the Christian propaganda videos by Stephen Miller.
Okay, I still didn't follow it. One at a time. What did he say? Since this makes no sense to me whatsoever. Say it slowly and clearly, Keith. I'm not following you. What now?
Prager.
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 Okay, Prager University. What about them?
They are now allowed to be showing their videos in Florida public schools.
They're showing my videos in public schools?
No.
I'm not following what you're saying. They're showing what videos in public?
Stephen Miller's Christian videos are being shown in schools. So there are creationist videos and creationist material being shown to children in public schools.
Good.
So
good.
it is
I think
taxpayer funded.
Well, kids ought to see all sides of the issue. If I said nobody
I'm
made
not
this,
against that, but it should be presented as what it is.
I agree. Evolution
Right.
should be presented as a religious belief. We don't have any evidence that a bacteria turned into a human. We believe it happened, and the God that you worship is time. How did this bacteria turn to the human? I know your answer already. Over billions of years, you do have a God that you worship called time. You just won't admit it.
How is time a God?
In your mind and in the evolutionist mind, time is able to accomplish what we can't see. We don't see any
Gravity
animal
accomplishes what we can't see. Germs accomplish what we can't see. Those are all theories.
Well, do you believe these? Well, by the way, you said I didn't give a definition. You said kind. Species has a
It
better
doesn't matter.
definition.
The definition of kind doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, here, Scientific American said, to this day, scientists struggle with the question, what's a species? The debate is far from over. Let's see, come the species word. They have 26 published definitions of species. Southern Utah University, a biologist, at last count, there were 26 published concepts in circulation of what is a species. To draw the line between species becomes frustrating. Two species of mice might interbreed where their ranges overlapped, raising the question of what name to give the hybrids. They're still a mouse, okay? This is what you guys don't get. We see, but my point would be nobody's ever, they said defining species is like trying to define the undefinable, indefinable. Look at the term species as arbitrary for the sake of convenience to a set of individuals closely resembling each other, Darwin said. 1942, the gene pool. So defining a species, Berkeley University. A species is often defined as a group of individuals actually or potentially able to interbreed, like these happy-faced spiders. Let's see, they can interbreed, but they sure look different. Are they the same species? I'm just pointing out, nobody's ever had a concrete, rock-solid, what exactly is a species? But yet you complain about the word kind not having the same problem. I point out the animals know what they want to breed with. The cows don't even try to breed with the spiders or the pine trees or the fish. Don't even try. Don't even think about it, as far as we know, if they think at all. So what we've observed in every farmer in the history of the world will tell you is cows produce cows, no exceptions. But you wish to believe by faith that the cow has a common ancestor with a potato. Do you have a common ancestor with a potato, Keith?
You can list, do you have a common ancestor with X life form? And I will say yes, unless it is some alien life form.
Okay, so for the record, you believe you have a common ancestor with a potato, and everything.
Butter squash.
Okay,
Any life form you can think of.
Frogs, all of them. Y'all have a common
All of
ancestor.
them.
Yeah. Has anybody
We didn't
ever?
come from them, but we're related
No,
to them.
I didn't say you did. I said you have a common ancestor. Has anybody ever seen a potato produce a non-potato?
No, and we don't need to because that's not what evolution is.
Well, does this chart shows a protozoa slowly becoming a biology teacher?
Did a single protozoa become and morph into a teacher? Is that what it's teaching?
No. The protozoa over millions of generations slowly gained arms, legs, ears, eyes, lungs, kidneys, all these features that humans have that protozoa don't have. It slowly gained. Do you believe the protozoa slowly over millions of years evolved into what we call a human?
It evolved into something that was not a protozoa, which evolved into something else, which evolved into something else. Nothing went straight from protozoa to human.
I didn't say it did. But again, there's your God showing up. It happened slowly over millions of years, so we can't see it. Science, the definition of science is knowledge, from the Greek word seer, meaning to know, or Latin word know. What do we know? We know protozoa produced protozoa. We know that. We do not know that protozoa turned to a human. You have to believe that. That's why it's a faith. It's a religious belief. And you're welcome to it. But don't call it science. It's not science. Evolution is a religion. You take on faith. We don't see any of this junk happening. You can believe it all you want. 366 varieties of hummingbirds. I agree. That doesn't prove they're related to pine trees and ladybugs. So I just resent you guys making all of us, we're all having to pay for your religion to be taught in our school system. That's wrong. And I'm going to do everything I can to stop that.
Science does not use faith. There are people with faith. There are Christians and Jews and Muslims that are all scientists, and they all believe, not all, but a large portion of them believe in evolution.
There's the key word. They believe in it. It's a religion. I'll debate them all. Tell them all. Give me a call. 855 Big Dino extension 3. I'll take them all on.
I'll concede that it's a belief, but just because it's a belief does not mean a religion. They're not synonyms.
Well, definition of religion.
Have dogma.
Here we go. Definition of religion: a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe. Do you have a belief about how the universe got here? Do you have a belief about the cause of how we got the Big Bang, I would assume? Do you have a belief about how life got started? That's a belief.
You have another definition of religion that's not cherry-picked?
Well, this is from thesaurus.com. Let's see. A specific fundamental set of beliefs and practices agreed upon by a number of persons. Religion from Britannica. Human beings' relation to that which they regard as holy, sacred, absolute, spiritual, divine. A way people deal with ultimate concerns about their lives and their fate after death. Do you have a belief about what happens to you when you die? What's going to happen to you when you die?
I'll be gone.
You'll be gone.
From Oxford, the belief in and worship of a superhuman power or powers, especially a god or gods. Ideas about the relationship between science and religion.
Excellent. And your God is time. You believe time has the power to turn. Do we ever see an amoeba produce a non-amoeba? You believe they did it. How did a protozoa, whichever one you want to start with, how did this protozoa get eyes and ears and legs?
Sensitive cells that are already present.
So the DNA in the original protozoa had all the DNA code to make ears, eyes, hair. Is that in lungs? That's your final answer?
It had A, C, T, and G, all the things that make up DNA.
Right. I understand how DNA works and the CATG and all that stuff, but that's a 4-digit code. Our computers work on a 2-digit code, zeros and ones. The 4-place code is a bunch of times more complex than that. And the code just to make you, Keith, your DNA, if you took it out of every cell of your body, unwound it, tied them together, your DNA alone would go across the solar system twice. That's the code required to make you. And you believe it happened by chance with no designer, just with time and mistakes. Genetic mistakes, mutations, are going to add information to change it from a protozoa to a human. That's not science. That's a religious belief. You take that on faith. And don't get hung up on the word religion. Let me just, okay, you take it on faith that a protozoa can turn to a human. We never see a protozoa or bacteria or any single-celled creature do anything other than produce more single-celled creatures.
Are they exactly the same as the ones that produced them?
Well, you may get a variety of protozoa. I don't know how many kinds of protozoa there are. Maybe a few hundred.
It might get to the point where it's kind of a fine line on, is that still a protozoa?
Well, do we ever see it produce something where somebody says, hey, that's growing legs, that's getting eyeballs, that's getting a hearing system, a skeletal system, a muscular system, digestive system, reproductive system? We don't see this.
There were the lizards that developed the necessary digestive system to begin eating plants, and that happened in the span of 50 years. So yeah, we have seen new traits, new abilities form.
I think a lot of people have studied that. I think a lot of people have studied that and say they didn't get new information. I suppose you could learn to live on termites, different countries of the world. Do you think there's new information?
I said,
they already had
information.
Well, they already had a digestive system. It now just has something new to digest. I don't think that's new information. It's adapting to an ability to what now?
It has a whole new valve to process the.
A whole new valve? I don't understand what he's saying.
Yes, in its digestive tract that allows it to break down all of the plant material that your ancestors had no ability to do.
So are you claiming that this lizard did not have the bowels, the small intestine, large intestine to digest anything? It has new bowels?
It only digested insects, or its ancestors only digested insects, but it developed the ability to also digest plant material.
Right, but the ancestors already had small and large intestine like we do. They just now can digest a different different food source. I don't think they're developing anything.
The only way you can do that is by adding new traits, adding new information.
Protozoa don't have any intestines at all. None.
Okay.
Humans do. 20-foot small intestine, 5-foot large intestine. Where did this information come from? Intestines are really complicated.
Well, you
They're
have
wrinkled
different
up.
types of mutations. You have point mutations, you have relocation.
Okay. Point mutations are going to take existing information and switch it around. I can switch around the letters of the English alphabet from a word and make new words. Can I switch around the letters and make Chinese? No. Switching around existing information in a protozoa is not going to give you an intestine.
Well, in the English language, you've got 26 characters. We're only working with 4.
Right.
So there's a lot less combinations you can have with 4 rather than 26.
Sure. And is it your
in order to change from, if I wanted to become a chimp or produce some chimp in a lab with my DNA, all I'd have to do is tweak the differences in between a human DNA and a chimp DNA, and you find all the differences and you switch them using the same processes that nature does by point mutations or flipping the bases or translocation from one area to another and implanting it over here. And now you've got a whole new genetic sequence. So there's no really new information. It's like comparing your computer code analogy.
Right.
it's all ones and zeros. So in order to turn Microsoft Word into Microsoft PowerPoint, you don't have to put in any new information. You just have to change some of the ones and zeros and like just right, and you got
No problem,
PowerPoint.
huh? Okay. Well, I think you have two faulty assumptions. You're assuming that mutations make something new and better. That hasn't been observed. What? I'm just not understanding what you're saying.
It's not always better. Many times it's worse, but those get weeded out very quickly.
I would say every mutation we've observed is worse. No one's ever seen a mutation mutations make things that are worse, harmful, or fatal, or neutral. They do nothing.
Are pretty good piano players.
Pentadactylism, 10 fingers, you mean? What?
Yeah, 11. Well,
I like having it. Okay, the DNA code in your body that allows you to bend your finger. If you were going to make a robot and you want the robot to bend its finger like this, you want it to put a different amount of tension on the flexor muscles and have the joints. The code to make a finger bend for a computer, for a robot, was probably tens of thousands of lines of code, especially if you want that thing to do a different amount of pressure. Let's grab slowly. Let's not squeeze the glass and break it. Let's just gently hold it. The code to make a robot hold its fingers around a cup would take tens of thousands of lines of code. Humans have the similar code that allow us to bend our fingers. Monkeys probably have the same lines of code because they do the same thing, bend their fingers. That doesn't prove a common ancestor. It proves a common designer. That's all. It's a co-design. Millions of lines of code to make a human. Trillions, quadrillions. So do you believe natural selection will make this mutation take over the population? You understand, if you had an animal, if you had a protozoa that mutated a little bit, you got to have another one to mate with in the same vicinity at the same time of the opposite sex. You got to have two. It really becomes impossibly complex, and I think impossible, period. That's why I say the natural selection you guys think about, one animal is a little better than the rest. He evolved something new. Now the rest of them have to die, or that new improved gene code gets blended back into the population. So evolution's a religion of death, that's all. It's not life. Mutations are the source of material in populations. Darwin thought it's a fact that all animals and plants are related to each other. It's not a fact, it's a belief. You've never seen a human produce a non-human or come from a non-human. Where's mutation happening today? Most even famous evolutionists like Pierre Gross would say, no matter how numerous they may be, mutations do not produce any kind of evolution. Introducing radiation to cause mutations causes all kinds of problems, all kinds of infections. Nobody's ever seen a good mutation. I'd like to see, what's the best one you know of that we could count as evidence that would turn a protozoa to a human? You want us all to teach that protozoa turned to human. You think this chart is accurate. I'd like to know what's the best example you have of a good mutation.
I would say the mutation that allowed the single-cell organisms to clump together. That's a pretty good one.
Single-celled organisms clumping together to make a colony is not becoming a new organism. Humans clump together and make armies, they make cities, we're still individual humans. Do those cells that clump together to make a colony, do they now have reproductive organs where the whole colony can mate with another whole colony and produce another whole colony? Or do they all go back to single
because it's not at that stage yet.
It hasn't happened yet. But you have faith that it will happen if we give them long enough, right?
Well, it did happen.
How do you know? Because we're here, right?
Evidence.
Well, that's what I'm asking for. Where's the evidence?
I don't have anything on the amoeba. But I don't see how you can look at that and not say that we're just another animal. You've got fish, salamander, tortoise, chick, hog, cat, rabbit, human. You go back up to the embryonic stage, pretty much identical. Even people that do this as a profession have a hard time distinguishing between embryos.
Okay, well, let me explain, Keith, in case you haven't studied this. Ernst Haeckel made these drawings that you're using on your screen right here. There's his chart. You're using his exact chart by Ernst Haeckel back in 1869. Darwin wrote his book 1859 and said, we should find evidence for my theory. Haeckel loved Darwin's book and said, he was an embryologist. He studied embryos. That's what he did for a living, professor of embryology at University of Jena in Germany. Haeckel made this chart in 1874. His own university held a trial and said, Haeckel, you're lying, okay? This chart is baloney. On top, Keith, are Haeckel's drawings. Underneath are actual photographs from an embryologist, Dr. Richardson, in, where was this at? One university in St. George Medical School in London. He took photographs of those same creatures. What you showed is drawings made by Haeckel, and they're fake. He admitted it. His own university convicted him of fraud. He said, I should feel condemned, but hundreds of other biologists lie under the same charge. He lied. Haeckel's drawings are fraud. I'm shocked that you would use that as evidence for evolution when it's been proven wrong for 150 years. That's not evidence. What's your next best one?
You're saying that embryos don't look like that.
I did not understand what he said.
I'm saying you're saying that embryos don't look like that.
Correct. I'll show you on top, right here. The top row is Haeckel's drawings. The bottom row is actual photographs. Yes, the salamander embryo does not look like Haeckel's drawing. The turtle embryo does not look like Haeckel's drawing. The rabbit embryo does not look like Haeckel's drawing. He lied. The drawings are fake. Try again. Give me your next best one.
Okay. This one is from Britannica.
What's going on? Joe, shut it off. We got background noise here. Embryology has been proven to be not evidence at all for evolution. There's plenty of stuff on that. They're still teaching it, I know, and it's sad. They should not. Those little folds of skin that they're claiming are gill slits on this biology textbook. Here, I'll show you. If you want to know the truth about them, I'd like to know truth. That's all I want to know. Those folds of skin develop into bones in the ear and glands in the throat. They never have anything to do with breathing. The fish has folds of skin. They develop into gills. The humans do not. They become the bones of the ear, the stapes and incus, and glands in the throat, thyroid. They never have anything to do with breathing. So don't use that as evidence. Don't teach that to anybody else, okay, that's evidence for evolution, because it's not. If you got real evidence, I'd be glad to see it. But Haeckel lied. There's his drawings. On top are actual photographs. He lied. But they're still teaching that. And I'm sorry, you probably paid to get the education to learn that. So ask for your money back.
Let's see. You also mentioned about whenever a new form, species, kind, whatever you want to call it, emerges, that they're not going to have any kind of mate to find. But
Correct.
that only works if you don't understand evolution and you're thinking of it as a rock giving birth to an elephant or whatever. Because it doesn't work in big jumps like that. You're not going to have one life form that's vastly different than the rest of the population.
Well, my objection is
that you touched on it when you were talking about this trait would just get mixed back into the gene pool. It would get mixed back into the gene pool, but it would still be in the gene pool. And it would continue to emerge.
Mm-hmm.
And its emergence would become more and more frequent until it took over, provided it was a beneficial mutation. Even though it's a very minuscule mutation.
Right. That's a great story you told, but it's not observable science. Nobody ever sees this happen. You can imagine that it happened, and you can imagine you got billions and trillions of years for it to happen in. But again, science is what we can observe. I agree there are family
It's not
trees of
gonna happen
humans.
within one person's lifetime or two people's lifetimes or 100 people's lifetime. You're not going to see major change like that without the long periods of time.
That's why I said your God is time.
Well, I can't drive to California in 13 seconds, but that doesn't mean I can't drive to California.
Correct. So if somebody's able to drive
takes
step by
time.
step to California, I agree. I've driven to California a couple of times. I don't want to do it again. Okay. But this textbook shows, look at this, boys and girls. See this chart right here? I'll draw it up for you. There's the chart they use. Millions of years. Okay. I agree there's a family tree of frogs. 7,371 now described species of frog. Probably had a common ancestor called a frog. And I don't know how many kinds of snakes, whole bunch. And they teach the kids, they all go back to a common ancestor. This chart that's used in public schools all over America and all over the world says cows and hummingbirds and frogs and fish have a common ancestor. Say it loud, boys and girls. An octopus is my 325 millionth cousin, and I'm proud. This is propaganda. This isn't science. Nothing but propaganda to teach a religion called evolution. These family trees do not exist. All we see is cows make cows. Amoeba, bacteria, have an 8-hour generation time. You say you can't see it in one lifetime. Well, let's use bacteria. They can get born, grow up, get married, have babies in 8 hours. In one day, you can see 3 generations. In one scientist's lifetime, if he was to study it for 50 years, take 50 times 365 times 3, he gets a whole bunch of generations. We still only see him make bacteria. Protozoa only make protozoa. Amoeba only make amoeba. We don't see it happening. But you want to believe, and you're welcome to believe it, that the protozoa slowly turned to a biology teacher. I'm saying, great, believe that if you want, but that's not observable. Science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. We don't observe protozoa produce anything except baby protozoa. Everything you said tonight is what you imagine happening slowly over long ago. We can't see it now because it happened too slow and long ago. But a lot of fairy tales start off that way, long ago and far away. That's all you've got is another fairy tale, Keith. I'm sorry. Another fairy tale. It's not science. My throat is hurting. I don't want to go too much longer. I've been talking for 2 days straight here. Any other evidence you want to give for evolution?
Well, you've got the fossil record. You've got the geologic column,
One
which I
topic
know
at a
those
time.
are all buzzwords for you.
Well, hold it. Let's go one at a time. I agree. Fossils, there are lots of fossils in the ground. I have a huge fossil collection in my museum. Here's a fossil fish, okay? All we really know from any fossil is it died. You could not prove it had any children at all, let alone different children. Well, okay, I believe this fish probably had parents. That I would agree. I don't think I could prove it had babies. I certainly could not prove it had babies that lived or babies that were different.
But you can
All we've
prove
ever seen is
that species of fish reproduced.
I don't know that this one reproduced and had babies at all.
Not that specific fish, that species of fish.
I don't even know that. It might have gone extinct. This might have been the last one. All I know is
It
we found it
existed,
in the
so
rock.
that species must have reproduced or it wouldn't exist.
Well, no, it must have had parents. We don't
That
know that it had
reproduced.
children.
That were the same
parents
species as that
right.
fish.
The parents
So that
reproduced.
species
This
did
is the
reproduce. Whether that specific one reproduced or not, that species
Right.
was reproductive.
Has anybody ever seen a fish produce a non-fish baby? I think the
No,
answer
because
would be
that's not
no.
how evolution works. It's going to keep
Evolution doesn't
producing a
work at all.
fish until it gets to a point where you kind of wonder, is that still a fish? Can we still call that a fish? And then it'll keep going until it's like, yeah, no, we can't call that a fish anymore.
Well, again, you're off into imagination land. You just use the word farm, F-A-R-M, fish, turn to amphibians, amphibians turn to reptiles, reptiles turn to mammal. This is the evolution propaganda. So you think at some point this fish or a fish turned into an amphibian.
No.
So it went from breathing with gills to breathing with lungs.
No, it probably went
Where-
breathing from a combination of both gills and lungs.
Okay, it probably went.
And then
Again, you're showing your faith. You believe it probably happened. That's not science, Keith. It's not science. It's a religion. You believe it happened. It probably happened. It had to because we're here. You've already decided the end product. You already decided amoeba turned to humans. That's already in your mind. Now, how did it happen? You're not worried about did it happen. You're just worried about how did it happen. You're not even willing to consider did it happen because you've already decided. You think it happened. Okay. I'm telling you, I have lots of
That's actually
fossils
where
here.
you're wrong, because that would be considered dogma, and that only exists in a religion, which evolution is not. If we get some evidence that shows, hey, we were wrong right here. This was wrong. Let's fix this, and that's what we do.
Okay. Well, show me the evidence for these family trees. Here is a fossil clam in the closed position. Clams open as soon as they die. If you go to a restaurant and eat clams, which I haven't done, I've never been that hungry, it has to be closed when they dip it in the hot water. Because if it's open, that means it's dead. It means it's going to have all kinds of bacterial problems, okay? So if a clam dies, it opens. I think everybody agrees with that. So the way to get fossilized closed clams, and there are trillions of them in the world, we've probably got 100 of them here in our museum, petrified closed clams had to be buried fast and buried alive. I think that's pretty good evidence for a flood, like Noah's flood. I'm not asking everybody to teach Noah's flood in public school. I don't think we should teach origins at all in public school, creation or evolution. Don't teach either one. They're both
Well, have
religious.
you ever heard of the survivalship bias? The very popular case of it in World War II, whenever they were assessing the damage from planes that came back from war, and they were trying to figure out which parts of the plane to arm. So they were looking at all these planes that came back, and they noticed they had bullet holes in all the wings and very similar places on the plane. And then they realized we don't armor those places. We armor the places that we don't see the gunshots, because those are the planes that didn't come back. So when you're saying you only see clams that are closed, maybe that's because it's the only type of clams that are preserved long enough to become fossilized. So you're just looking at a survivorship bias.
Okay, maybe with the survivor thing, some intelligent engineers decided to armor the places that needed to be armored. That took intelligence, intelligent design. That didn't happen by chance. The plane didn't just grow armor where it needed to grow armor.
No, it did happen by chance.
It happened by design, didn't it?
No.
They decided we better armor plate the cockpit. Now they got some of the airplanes have the titanium bathtub the pilot flies in. Really expensive.
Because all the planes that came back had no gunshot holes in the cabin. Because the ones that got gunshot holes where the pilot are, they didn't come back. They didn't get to study those.
Right. That's logical. The planes can't fly themselves.
Right.
So
you're saying that is chance. That's probability.
Well, clams, all we've ever observed in the history of humanity, clams make baby clams every time.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys got the clams in your family tree as part of your ancestors. You believe you're related to a clam?
Yes.
Not directly. You have a common ancestor. Okay.
Yes.
You're welcome to believe that. I don't care what you believe, but it's not science. I wish you guys would just admit this is my belief. It's a religious belief, and that's all it is. It's a religion. You believe it. And you believe time can accomplish it. Billions of years, slow changes, billions of years. Those are your two gods. We don't see it happen, but we believe it happened. I say, yay, more power to you. Believe whatever you want. But I don't think tonight you've presented any evidence for evolution, except stuff proven wrong 150 years ago. Not true. So give me your next best one, and we got to quit. I can't hardly talk anymore. Come on down to Dinosaur Adventureland. We'll put you up in one of our cabins, show you around. We can have the debate right here. My throat will be better by then. We've had a couple evolutionists come down. I offer it and invite them. We'll feed you, house you. No, don't charge nothing. We'd bring your whole family. Come on down. We'd love to have you, Keith. I'd like to see you give your heart to the Lord. Get saved. Because the path you've chosen not only is wrong scientifically, it's really going to be bad for your judgment day. If I'm right, this is Pascal's wager, if I'm right and you're wrong, you're in trouble. Now, if you're right and there's no God, I haven't lost anything. I'm going to the
We're
grave right
both
next to
wrong
you.
and the Islams are right.
Okay, maybe so. Bunch of different religions, and evolution's one of them. It's not a science.
You have to deny thousands of gods in order to call yourself a Christian.
Oh, I agree. I think all the rest of them are wrong.
I'm
right.
just denying one more.
Okay, that's the one you better not deny.
Says
Like that one bullet hole in the wrong place. Whew, that's going to be bad. Okay, now, what other evidence do you have for evolution? I think that's what the topic of the debate is.
Geologic column.
Okay, thank you. I would say there is no such thing as a geologic column. None. Does not exist anywhere in the world. I taught earth science 15 years. So maybe you can finally answer the question. I've asked hundreds of evolutionists to answer this simple question. They always avoid it. You claim the layers are different ages and the top layer is younger. This geologic column was made up in 1830. They claim the top layer is younger. Okay, where did all the material come from for that top layer? Did it come from outer space? How can the layers be different ages? My contention is every speck of dirt on the planet is the same age, whether it's 6,000 or 6 trillion, it's all the same age. If I shuffle a deck of cards, the top card's not younger. They're all the same age. If I tip these sand art toys over, they'll make 10 or 15 or 20 different layers. The layers aren't different ages. It's all in here at the same time. I keep asking, you claim the layers are different ages. Would you please tell me, where's the top layer coming from? Why is the Holocene only 10,000 years old, but the Cambrian is, billions of years old? Where was all that Holocene dirt sitting for billions of years, waiting to land?
Well, you say this
There's no
hasn't been answered yet, but
Nobody's
I've
ever
actually
answered.
heard people answer it for you.
Okay, well, you
said,
answer it one more
Does
time.
it come from space? Some of it, we get pelted from space with microscopic things that, they burn up in the atmosphere, but where do they end up? Still in our atmosphere.
Do you think
And
there's enough?
You've got
Even
plenty of stuff coming up through volcanoes,
Right.
and volcanic ash coming down, burying things with rapid sedimentation, which easily can create fossils, which many of them are found in fossilized ash.
Well, I can't find my deck of cards, but if I shuffle a
Think
deck
about
of
how
cards,
many leaves, just leaves, fall to the ground, and they decompose and turn to dirt. And all the dead animals and dead bugs and dead birds and everything, all the death, they rot and become dirt, layering
Keith,
on top.
Okay, slow down. Let me explain. Trees suck minerals out of the ground, put it into their leaves. The leaf dies and goes back to the ground. It's the same mineral. It didn't get a new age because it went through the process of becoming a leaf. It's
But
still
it
the
gets
same
laid down in layers. It gets moved.
And if material comes from outer space and lands on the earth, it's still the same age. Every speck of dirt, every speck of matter in the universe is the same age.
But
Why
you
do
can
you
trace
claim
the
they're
rates
different
of
layers?
sedimentation and figure out how long it took those layers to become
Right.
as thick as they are.
Now that's a different story. I think sedimentation can take place quickly. Here's a petrified
Sometimes it
tree
can.
standing. Petrified trees found standing up, running through all these layers that you claim are different ages, are found all over the world. Thousands and thousands of petrified trees in the vertical position. Yellowstone's got a bunch of them. Petrified trees in the vertical position, I think, are pretty clear evidence all the layers formed in 1 year. In Noah's flood, the tide going up and down as the earth turns under this tidal bump that the moon holds steady is going to do what's called tidal pumping. The moon going up, the water going up and down is also going in and out. And it's a sideways movement of the water during Noah's flood that would make all the layers in 1 year. We find petrified trees in the standing position running through different seams of coal. This tree's got a 30-foot tree. Coal in the bottom goes up through a bunch of layers through another seam of coal. Same tree. And yet you guys think each seam of coal formed over millions of years with the whole forest having to grow. I'm telling you, the polystrata fossils, there are thousands of them in Joggins, Nova Scotia. You're in North Carolina, drive up there and see. Call, let's see, got the phone number here. Got Ian Juby lives there. IanJuby.org.
Where are most of those polystrate fossils found? near rifts and river basins?
Well, that's where they're exposed. I mean, you don't find
That's
them in the
where
middle of
they're
a
found,
field.
because that's where they are.
That's where
That's how
most
they're
fossils are
created.
found too. Most fossils are found in a place where they're exposed to the, by a river cutting away the extra dirt. So petrified trees in the vertical position are common. They're exposed
Not
where rivers have eroded away. The layers, my point is, the layers all have to be formed in 1 year, or the tree would rot and fall over. So you're saying, your answer that the layers
not
are
if it
different
fell
ages.
into a rift or it got covered up in a river basin.
In a river basin, it's going to make different layers quickly. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if I were to take a stake and just drive it down into the ground, that's not going to make it. Oh, it's going through several geologic columns. It's just penetration.
These trees aren't driven into the ground. They grew there. They have roots at the bottom. They grew. Nobody
Right.
drove the
And
tree
how would
into
those root systems be intact if the entire Earth was flooded by 10 Atlantic Oceans?
If the whole earth was flooded, the tide going up and down, making water go back and forth, is going to make
Would have
multiple layers.
uprooted these trees.
Some of them in some places, and it obviously did. That's how we have,
All
why
of
we have
them,
coal.
20,000 feet of
Coal.
water.
There are coal seams that are 300 feet thick. That would take a lot of trees, whole lot of trees. I just made probably 12 layers in the last 6 minutes. This bottom layer is 18 million years old. Now this one's only 12 million years old, and this top one's only 3 million. I can make up any story I want. And it's not true about these layers. These layers are, every speck of sand in here was put in here at the same time. There's no different age for the sand layers. They'll form layers every time I do this, every time. They form different layer patterns. The layers we have on the earth are all the same age, all made in one flood in the days of Noah, I believe. There is no such thing.
If it was all a rapid rush of sedimentation, just completely.
No. Noah was in the ark for a year. That tide going up, down, is also going in, out, hundreds.
That would be very violent.
In some
That would
places,
be
it probably
violent
was.
currents.
Yeah, it probably
So
was in some
how
places.
would you get very fragile insect wings, perfectly fossilized, undamaged, if you had mudslides of sedimentation just ripping through things? You're not going to have any insect wings fossilized.
Right. In those places, right. Those places where it was real violent, it probably didn't make any insect fossils, but other places it was probably calm. I bet there's storms.
I think I lost you.
Be typhoons going on. Wow. There's a typhoon. Yeah. Doesn't affect Lenox, Alabama. We can have a hurricane in Lenox that does not affect the people in North Carolina. So
But a global flood would affect it globally.
Oh, I agree. A global flood would do
So
just
why
what
would
it
you
does
have
now.
different currents if this is all homogenized?
All right. The Pacific Ocean is huge. There are places right now on the Pacific where they're experiencing violent storms.
Do you
There's
have
other
any
places
trees
on
at the
the
bottom of
ocean.
it?
What?
Do you have any trees standing at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean?
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of trees get buried in mud. A lot of trees floating around in the ocean right now. Trees are floating all over bodies of water.
Rooted trees standing in the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, probably so. Mount St. Helens did that. It blew thousands of trees down. Many of them got buried standing up, floating in Spirit Lake.
But those weren't rooted. Those didn't have root systems.
Well, in those cases, they got ripped out. They have short root stump because it got ripped out. But if it would have eroded slowly, then it would have had the whole root system. Okay, we're wasting time here, and I can't hardly talk. I'm sorry. I'll do another debate with you anytime if we can get my voice back in time. But you're saying, I asked you the question, where's this material coming from? And you said volcanic eruptions, outer space dust, and was there a third one?
Plant waste, animal waste, deteriorating
Okay,
bodies.
animal waste. So an animal eats a plant, goes up, poops on the ground. It now becomes a different age.
It relocates it. It relocates.
It's still, the minerals are still the same age. Relocating, shuffling a deck of cards does not make one older or younger. Relocating the dirt does not change the age of it. Every speck of dirt in the universe is the same age. If it came from a big bang, then it's all 13.772 billion years old. Every speck of dirt on the planet should be 13.772. How do you know when it was relocated?
No.
It was all made at the same time. Every speck of dirt in the universe was made at the same time, either by your Big Bang or by a creator. There is no such thing as a geologic column. No such thing. It was made up in 1830. Billions of people have.
Why are the patterns so consistent? Why do we never find things in the wrong place?
Well, they're not consistent. There's only 2 or 3 places in the world where they find them in this order they show in the textbook.
Do you ever
Most of the world
have them in this human fossil with bite marks from a T-Rex?
Well, if everything was vegetarian before the flood came, like the Bible says, you probably wouldn't find bite marks on those that drowned at all.
Well,
because they weren't eating each other.
If everything was perfect back then, why did they need to eat at all?
Well, if you had a perfect car, why do you need to put gas in it?
A perfect car would need gas.
Oh, electric car. Well, then you got to charge it up. Okay.
Well,
you got to keep putting something in.
A perfect car wouldn't need any kind of fuel.
Hey, you make one of those, I'll buy it. I want one that don't have to charge. Don't have to cost nothing to drive.
There is no perfect.
All right. Why don't you give your closing statement, or I'll give mine first, whichever you would like. Your position is, if I don't want to put words in your mouth, that we all have a common ancestor, and you are related to a potato, and what else? A clam, and you have a common ancestor with all these. That's your position. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm related to all of those things. Yes.
My position is, all we've ever seen is animals produce what anybody else would consider the same kind. Cows make baby cows, no exceptions. To claim that a cow and a fish, what now?
I said that's all you see whenever you don't look.
Okay, ask any farmer in the history of the world. Have you ever seen your cow produce something other than a cow? Do you know of any I can go look at? I'll go look at them.
As I said before, it doesn't happen like that.
Doesn't happen at all.
Always going to give birth to a cow. That's something we agree on.
Very good.
What we don't agree on is the fact that these microevolutions can add up until it becomes a question of whether or not you can call that a cow.
This is where you're showing us
what different does a pug need to be from a husky before you call them different?
I happen to have a pug. It is just barely in the dog kind, okay? Real stupid, okay? Wouldn't survive 10 minutes in the woods on its own. Most of these exotic breeds that man has created, A, they're still the same kind, still dog. B, most of them would not survive in nature.
How long will they be a dog? How different does it need to be? If you had a pug and you gradually mutated it and maybe you got a pug with feathers, would that still be a dog?
Could we ever get the pug to grow, any dog to grow wings and become a bird and fly? Could we add that information?
That's a major step further. I'm saying just changing the fur to feathers. If you were to change the fur to feathers, would that be a dog?
Nobody's ever done that. You can't change the fur to a feather.
Regardless of whether or not anybody's done that, if they did, would you still call it a dog?
A feathered dog. If they did put feathers on it, they would. Who's doing this? This is intelligent people.
It's just a.
Well, you're making up a silly story. If I said, well, if elephants could fly, what would you say then? Don't stand under them when they fly by. You know?
It's called a thought experiment.
I can't understand.
Would you call that a different kind?
Would you call an elephant that could fly a different kind?
I would.
Okay. Call it whatever you want. My point is, what science is supposed to be is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. To show a kid a chart like this and say cows are related to hummingbirds is criminal. They should not do this in a public school. Private school can teach whatever they want. The Muslims can teach what they want in their school. The Catholics can teach what they want in their school. But if we're all going to pay for it, this is criminal to teach this. And to say that you're related to an octopus, this has no business being in a public school. None. It's not science. To say that your 325 millionth cousin was an octopus. This is propaganda, nothing else.
But you
Keith,
still
you have a
never really
closing
answered
remark?
my question. Would a feathered pug be a dog, in your opinion?
I think it's a ridiculous question. Would a feathered elephant be an elephant? You answer that one.
I think you're just dodging the question because it paints you into
I think it's a dumb question. Okay, real dumb. Okay, we don't see, it doesn't happen. We don't see dogs produce feathers. Why would you make a statement like that? I'm not dodging the question. It's a silly question. We see dogs produce dogs. They now have 339 recognized breeds of dogs by the American Kennel Association. They're all dog. Nobody has seen.
It's very easy to do genetic manipulation and change from scales to feathers. So, or
It's
feathers to
easy.
scales. So let's say they did some CRISPR stuff and had a chicken with scales.
Well, chickens already have scales on their legs and feathers on their
Yes, but I'm saying whole body.
It's adding how many scales they've already got scales on their legs.
Right, but
Do chickens have, how about get chickens that can breathe underwater? Gills.
okay.
Make me one of
What
those.
if we did that?
Good. Make me one. Can you make one? Chickens that can breathe underwater.
But
anybody make one?
If it were made tomorrow, would you call
Again,
that a chicken?
No, that would be something new. If a bunch of scientists had to do it, that wouldn't be evidence for evolution. That'd be evidence it takes intelligence to make those changes, wouldn't it?
But how would the scientists do it? They would change the genetic code. What if the mutations change the genetic code?
We don't observe this happening. You're making up a fairy tale. What if?
Right,
This isn't
because I'm
science.
trying to get you to see the logic of it, that you're trying so hard to dodge.
It's not logical. It's not logical that you get a magic flying carpet. What if Aladdin really could fly on a
that's not
carpet?
logical,
Oh, you say
because
that?
you're talking
It doesn't
about
happen.
magic. Now you're getting into biblical stuff. I'm talking
No.
about evidence.
The evidence is there are 339 recognized breeds of dogs. The evidence is dogs have always produced dogs. Man selects one to survive with a trait that he likes, artificial selection, natural selection, both work fine. They only select what's already there. You're never going to select a dog that can fly. That's not in the gene code. I can't talk anymore. I am so sorry. Joseph, schedule another one with him. And let's have another, if you want, round two. I would like to see your best evidence for why we should believe a dog and a banana have a common ancestor, or you have a common ancestor with a potato. Why would you believe that? Can you do that? You want to give contact information if people want to contact you, or would you rather not?
Yeah, I believe you have my email.
Well, I mean, if anybody else wants to schedule you for a debate, I give mine all the time.
No.
There's my address, bigdrdino.com. My address, my phone number. I'm not ashamed of where I live, but
Right. Well, I've got my YouTube channel that I've actually just now started, The Faithless Heathen.
supposed to be doing questions a half hour ago. I am so sorry. Call some questions. Let Keith talk for a minute. Or I get my throat back under control.
But I've got my new YouTube channel, The Faithless Heathen.
The Faceless Heathen.
The Faithless. Without
Spell it. I can't. Oh, without faithless.
Yes.
You are
Faithless.
faithless. You have more faith than you realize. Okay, you have a lot more faith than I have. You believe a amoeba can turn to a human. That's a lot more faith than I got.
You believe in dragons and witches and wizards and giants.
I do.
That's in the Bible.
Okay. All right. Question. Here's one for you. Shofar says, how do evolutionists explain free thought? Go ahead. How would you explain free thought?
Free thought. Thoughts are just firing of neurons. I mean, if you had some sort of omnipotent God, there would be no free thought, because he would already know what you're going to think before you think it, and therefore you can't think something else and prove him wrong. He already knows what's going to happen, so it's predestined. So you don't really have any free thought or free will. But from an evolutionary standpoint, you do, essentially.
Okay. Then I would like to ask, if your brain is nothing but a bunch of chemicals that got together by chance, how do you know you can trust your thoughts? Maybe you got a couple chemicals in there backwards. Remember that CATG?
Our senses are practically useless a lot of times. That's why optical illusions work, because we can barely comprehend the world around us with our senses. That's why scientists use things outside of our senses.
Okay. Next question. What do you have there, brother? We see monkeys, we see people. Where's all the part monkeys? Go ahead.
Dead.
They're all dead.
They're all dead.
So in the past, something ape-like turned to human, but there's plenty of apes and monkeys today, but none of them are doing it again.
Turned to human. That sounds too Pokemon for me.
Okay.
It didn't just morph and change one.
Right. One individual did. The whole population slowly changed. I know what you believe. My answer would be there aren't any because it didn't happen. Didn't happen. But you got the question first. Anything you want to add to that? Oh.
You want to add anything?
Oh, Nate. No. You don't want to add anything?
No.
Okay. Nate, Keith, I'm sorry. Nate says, what will happen to you when you die? What's your answer?
Essentially what happened to me before I was born. Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. I would have a different answer. I know I'm forgiven. I'm going to heaven. I don't deserve it at all, but I'm going. Praise God for the blood of Jesus Christ. Have you read the Bible is a question for you. Joyce wants to know. Keith, have you read the Bible?
Yes.
You read it. Okay. Good.
You read it?
And it's your favorite version too. It's King James.
I didn't hear what he said. What now? You have a favorite verse?
Favorite version.
Oh, King James. Yay. Now you're getting there. Okay. Can you find a two-celled organism? Jim wants to know. Keith, where's a two-celled organism?
A multicellular organism?
Oh, no, a two-celled.
I'm not sure I follow the question.
I can't understand what he said.
You don't follow the question.
I'm not sure I follow the question. Two-cell.
Can you find a two-celled organism?
Yeah, that'd be a multicellular organism. There are plenty of those.
No, there's colonies that get together. A two-celled organism. We know there's lots of one-celled. We know there's lots of multi-celled. He's asking, where's the two-celled? Fair question.
Okay.
Or did it go right? Did it go from one to millions collectively all at one jump?
No.
Okay.
Nothing
So where's the
was
two-celled?
all one jump.
Okay. So where are the two-celled organisms?
Okay.
My answer is there aren't any. None have ever been seen in the history of the world. You can believe it if you want, but it's not science. Keith, he's got one more question if you want to skip that one and go to another one. I got to quit after this one. I can't talk anymore. Okay, what's the next one? What do you got there? So what's before a cow? What came before the cow? Good question.
Before the cow? How far
Yeah,
back do you want to go?
I didn't hear him again. What turned into the cow?
How far back are you trying to go?
Oh, just right before cow. What was right?
Which came from a cow, came from a slightly different cow. But as far as what we immediately call the last species before it became what we call a cow, I'm not really sure what that would be called. I mean, I could look it up, simple Google search, but it was just
probably just an owl before they invented the C. Just called an owl. It's probably just called an ow, O-W. They hadn't invented the C yet. So right before the cow was the ow. I don't know. It doesn't happen. It's fairy tale stuff. Keith, thanks for doing this. I'll be glad to do this live. Call Joseph, schedule another time. I got to quit. I'm going to hurt myself here. Thank you for coming, and I'm going to pray for you. I'll see you Judgment Day for sure.